Hey guys, it's your boy, Ballface8020, back again with another great commentary. First of all, I just want to wish you guys all a belated Merry Christmas. If you celebrate it, hopefully your holiday has been good so far. For me, the holiday has been good, but I'm also, it's also getting a bit old and I'm kind of ready for things to go back to normal. Um, so anyway, in this video, I'm going to talk about, earlier I had made, I guess about a week ago now, maybe more than a week ago, I'm not sure. I had made a video about how I was, an accidental MGTOW, even though I didn't really agree with the movement. And I got some comments on the video, I guess from MGTOWs saying, some of them were actually kind of supportive, and some were saying like, kind of almost in defense of MGTOW. Some of them I couldn't really understand, but I feel like since I brought up um, that that I that I don't like MGTOW, I might as well make a video explaining my criticisms of it. Now, um, the first thing I want to say is that I do not hate MGTOWs. I do not dislike them. I acknowledge that they come in all different shapes and flavors. I have spoken with MGTOWs who are, very, balanced and balanced individuals who I found very likable. So this is nothing that I'm saying here is coming from a place of hate towards MGTOWs. And as for the actual MGTOW movement, I have criticisms of it, which I'm going to go into in this video, but I don't hate it. I don't hate the movement. I guess one criticism I would have is that I don't really see it as a movement at all. I see it more as just kind of an online circle jerk, and that's that's really where most of my criticism is going to be about. The but Also, again, if you saw my previous video, you would know that I definitely, absolutely have no problem with the MGTOW lifestyle since I'm living it. Um, there's certainly nothing about that. I'm not telling people you have to go out and get married or have relationships. I think for a lot of people, it is the right decision to not do it. Look, bottom line, it's not coming from a place of hate. This is just meant to be a critique. Maybe I'm wrong about some of this stuff, but I just want to tell you what I think. Okay, a brief history of the MGTOW movement. I didn't bother to look at the wiki for it, so I'm not sure its exact history, but I believe it started in the early aughts. My first exposure to it would have been in the early aughts, and I think so at the time it was new. And the reason I was exposed to it was because, at the time, as a freshman in college, is when I first really got into anti-feminism. When I look back on it, I'm not sure why I suddenly became so obsessed with feminism and developed such an antipathy for it, but I did. I mean, I guess when you're 19 or 20 years old, your brain is weird and it's easy to get sucked into these various things. This was before there was really big communities, but there was anti-feminist websites. I don't know if it's still around, but there was this website Angry Harry that I read. But anyway, it was through my exploration of anti-feminism that I first saw MGTOW. And so when I came upon MGTOW, it took me a while to figure out what they were talking about. But when I realized, oh, okay, this is what MGTOW's about, about eschewing relationships with women, blah, blah, blah. Or, the divorces, the family courts are against women, or against men, all that stuff. I was reading it, and I was like, my very first reaction was, after I learned what it was what does any of this have to do with feminism? And just like I get it, you're saying you want to avoid relationships with women for whatever, but I didn't see anything about feminism in it. It was more about like women are a pain in the ass or not worth it or stuff like that, or the courts are backed against us, but none of that has anything to do with feminism, which didn't stop any of them from blaming feminism for all their problems or for the problems with women. So I, as a younger guy, looked at it, and also back then, the the MGTOW was overwhelmingly jilted guys who had been either fucked over in divorce court or felt that they had been fucked over in divorce court. And so it wasn't as expansive a movement, if that's even what you want to call it, as it is now. So I had just kind of like dismissed it, stopped looking at it, and didn't really think about it. And it wasn't until years later that I found out, like I'm talking about over 10 years later, that I found out that not only does it still exist, but it seems to actually be growing. And that came as a real surprise to me. So let's see here. Okay, um, I think the first thing to, sorry, here's my notes, so you can see they're like completely screwed up here. So that's I probably should have rehearsed this before I did it, because this is going to be such a long video, just because there's so much to cover. But anyway, okay, yes, now I finally deciphered the order it's supposed to go in. So I think the first thing that we should talk about are the types of MGTOWs. Now, I mentioned that when I first discovered the movement, it was mainly just bitter divorcees. And as I said before, guys who had either been screwed over in a divorce or at least felt like they had been screwed over in a divorce. And I had watched some MGTOW channels as research for this video, and that certainly seems to be a very big type of MGTOW. I'm not, if you're talking about the actual MGTOWs who make comments on videos, I don't think that there are many of them that are bitter divorcees. But if you're talking about the guys who are actually producing MGTOW content, I would say most of them are, relationship guys. And when I say bitter, this isn't meant to be a criticism. These guys could, in fact, in at least some cases, what's the one guy's name? The Red Pill Truth or Red Pill Men's Health. Based on what he's saying, if he's telling the truth, and I believe he is, about his BPD or whatever it's called, ex-wife, he's got every reason to be bitter, and I think a lot of these guys do. So it's not they're bitter because they're bitter, but they've got reason to be. When it comes to the content creators, I think most are in that group. The actual people who comment on MGTOW movies and or just all types of YouTube videos, because MGTOW goes everywhere. They're actually not as big on Twitter as I thought they would be. But those guys tend to be a different type. And the second type is guys who have just had it. And particularly in this, like, these are guys who maybe they haven't been screwed in divorce yet or anything like that, but women can be tough to deal with, and they just don't want to do it anymore. I mean, they still may have the impulse for relationships, but they're just like, the juice is not worth the squeeze. So, and this time, particular in this demographic, maybe the biggest or at least the most notable subdemographic is underclass black men, in underclass American black men, who, and I'm generalizing here, but underclass black women tend to have very high financial standards for their men. Not as in they expect the man to necessarily earn a lot, but they expect the man to spend a lot of money on them. And in return, they're like, well, you get me, and it's, you should be grateful that you get to spend money on me. So there's a lot of underclass black men who are just like, fuck this shit, This is like, this just isn't worth it. And so then one criticism in the black pill community you'll hear of MGTOW is that they are just incels in denial. Now, from what I have seen of MGTOW, I don't believe that is the case for most of them. There is a subgroup who really do fit this incels in denial category. They're not really much different. Maybe they've gotten laid once or twice or something like that, and well, they're basically the same type of people who are incels. Who, they would be with women if they could, but they can't, so they go their own way. And this is sometimes they're called men sent their own way. I sometimes call them men coping their own way. So that's a different type. I think Certainly, I don't see a lot of content creators who are MGTOWs, men sent their own way, or incels in denial, but I do think on the message boards, a lot of them are. Whatever. Um, so anyway, we'll go a bit first. Like, why are they MGTOWs? Like, or specifically, what are the reasons do MGTOWs themselves give about why they're MGTOW? And I think that this is a really important part to understanding them, is what these guys themselves actually say. And not the main thing they'll mention, but I think the most meritorious thing they'll mention is family court. Because now I don't think the family court system is as stacked against men as fathers' rights, men's rights, and MGTOWs say it is. I'm talking about it in the United States. I don't think it's as bad as they say it is, but I absolutely believe that the family court is, in general, biased against men. And family court is always, everybody in a divorce, well, maybe not some women who get off pretty well, but generally speaking, even in a equitable divorce, there's going to be a lot of bad feelings because divorce fights are nasty. And since when there is a clear loser, that clear loser is often the man, there's going to be a lot of bitterness there. And so I think that's not necessarily the most common thing that I say, although I have talked to MGTOWs and that's what they say. Like, they say, like, look, MGTOW doesn't have anything to do with hating women or anything. It has nothing to do with nothing to do with anything except that you shouldn't marry or cohabitate with women until the divorce laws change to stop being so unfair. Or, have kids with women until the divorce and child support laws stop being so unfair. And that kind of gets into MGTOW kind of means different things to different people. To me, from what I've seen, that's not what MGTOW is. But that at least makes a lot of sense. You can agree, or I'm not sure I totally agree with that strategy, but I definitely agree that it at least pays to be cautious. It at least pays to know what the laws are going to be. At least know that if you are going to, pursue a romantic relationship with women in we're almost in 2020 America, or in any Western country, you do need to legally be aware of what you're getting into. So they're certainly onto something there. The other thing that they will frequently mention is feminism. And here's where MGTOW really starts to lose me. Because MGTOWs do not like feminism. I hate feminism too, but MGTOWs, the difference is that I hate feminism. I think it's really stupid. Well, at least third wave feminism. I think that first and second wave feminism have some good things going for them. The third wave feminism has truly nothing good going for it, and I hate it. But MGTOWs, the thing is, it's tough for me because, as I said, I'm not really pursuing relationships with women. So I'm not really in position to judge these guys. But these guys will blame feminism for their problems with women, and they're saying, well, women today aren't worth pursuing relationships with because they're all feminists, and because of feminism and stuff like that. I don't like this. I don't agree with this. I think it's just total bullshit. I think, but these guys, that's one thing they always say. Then the other would just be this kind of general, and this is what I probably see the most of, at least on MGTOW message boards. I don't necessarily see it that much on the MGTOW YouTube videos. So again, it can be hard to evaluate exactly what this movement is, because are you going by, just like on incels, like are you going to evaluate incels by what you see on incels.co, or are you going to evaluate it by what you see on Incels Without Hate? Like, which one is the true incels, and although incels aren't really a movement, they're just a classification. MGTOWs at least describe themselves as a movement, even though they kind of aren't. But MGTOWs is the same way. If you go to Undead Chronics channel, or if you go to the MGTOW subreddit, and I think the main MGTOW message board, you're going to see a ton of stuff with saying that, with so many words, women aren't shit, or women are just degenerate. And this is especially on the MGTOW subreddit. This is what you're going to overwhelmingly see, that women are trash and they're not worth it. And that's why we're MGTOW. Or I'm not sure that they necessarily use it to say like you should go MGTOW because women are trash, although some of them will say that, but they'll rather say we are MGTOW for whatever reason, and we're not missing out on anything because women are trash. And often this will tie back into the feminism thing. Okay, so let's get into some of my. I think I've explained. Hopefully, even if you are a MGTOW, I've given a pretty fair description of the different types of MGTOW and what the movement's about. Um, the but let's just go into some of my criticisms of it. The first thing, and this really gets in this. The first thing that needs to be said, if MGTOW really means going your own way, men going their own way, then what we are talking about is something that is not new. Okay, men have been going their own way forever. The difference is they didn't need to make a whole movement about it. So let me just give you some examples based on research I've done of famous men who went their own way. The French philosopher Voltaire, former president James Buchanan. These are guys who just eschewed marriage and relationships with women. George Eastman, he was one of the most famous photographers of all time. AJP Abdul Kalam, he's the father of India's missile program. Jeremy Wade, I should have written some notes because I have no idea who Jeremy Wade is. Somebody famous. The Wright brothers, the guys for who developed the first airplane. Some more modern guy. Oh, let's be really quick. One last non-modern guy is Thoreau, the civil disobedience guy. So like a really just a great American philosopher. Not that I agree with everything Thoreau said, but I did enjoy some of his works that I read, as assignments for high school. Again, just a great, really American philosopher. So he was MGTOW. Now, none of these guys said anything about it. Like, none of these guys made any big deal about a skewing relationship. They just kind of went out and did their own thing, and that was that. It wasn't like they had no need for any kind of movement or anything, but they did go their own way. Now, let's talk about some more modern guys. Ralph Nader, the politician. Wilt Chamberlain, the basketball player. And although Wilt Chamberlain may not count as a MGTOW because there are different types of MGTOWs. There's like monk mode MGTOW, which means you eschew all you don't even sleep with women, which was something Wilt Chamberlain was definitely not that kind of MGTOW. He slept with quite a few women. I think he said like well over 1,000. Maybe well over 5,000. I can't. Maybe well over 10,000. I can't remember exactly how many, but it was a lot, or at least so he said, and I think he's probably telling the truth. And then there's that for Bill Maher from Real Time with Bill Maher. Now, Bill Maher isn't necessarily the most admirable character in the world, and he's another non-monk mode guy. But all these guys were able to go out and do their own thing, and they didn't need to like blast it in everybody's face. It just like for them, romantic relationships just weren't something they were interested in. So I'm going to repeat myself. It's just nothing new. I mean, there is no need for a movement. Guys have been going their own way since the beginning of civilization. It's not. So why do we even need a movement? And unless, and we'll get into that later. Another thing that I don't like about MGTOW. I'm on some dangerous ground here because I already said I hate feminism. Well, guess what? I also hate white knighting. So I'm not trying to white knight, and I don't want to tell you that you can't criticize women. I criticize women. I don't think any group is above criticism or above critique, and then now it may not be good manners to critique that group, and you should use some common sense and some sensitivity, but no group is flawless. I mean, and you can critique any group, including women. Women certainly can be critiqued, and that's fine. However, there is a difference between critique and just hating the group. Now, if you want to just dislike and hate women, that's, I think you're mainly hurting yourself. I don't think you should do that. I'm not saying you're a bad person for hating women. I don't think you should do it, but I don't think you're necessarily, I'm not, going to write you off as an evil person or saying that anything you say, even about women, is invaluable because this guy is just a hater. But it's also not for me, and I don't think it's healthy. And the issue isn't just, but anyway, but let me talk more about exactly what I mean by the misogyny. Like, I'm not going to just say, oh, they're a misogynist and leave it at that. Because whatever, you guys have all heard that 1,000 times. Let's talk about the exact criticisms that they have of women and why I don't like that. Now, the first, and you cannot go to any MGTOW thing, any MGTOW channel, and not see this blasted all over, is the wall. These MGTOWs are obsessed. One second, I'm going to check the time. It's going pretty long, but this is good stuff. So I want to get, MGTOWs are obsessed with the wall. For those of you who don't know, the wall is when women lose their looks, literally lose their looks and lose their power over men. And I mean, if you're not familiar with MGTOWs, if you're familiar with MGTOWs, you know this, but if you're not, this is going to be kind of, the MGTOWs are, they talk about it all the time. They're obsessed with saying, like, oh, this is going to hit the, like, go to one of Undead Chronics videos. I know he's been banned from YouTube, but you can still find him on BitChute. A woman can't say anything without him saying, like, the wall is undefeated, the wall is coming for you. And these guys really get off on this idea of women losing their looks. And they and it's just like, it's not only is it mean-spirited, but it's not really true in the way that they think. Like, yes, okay, a Stacy type or a high-tier Becky is not going to have the kind of power over men when she's 40 that she does when she's 20. But her options as a 40-year-old, as a post-fertile 40-year-old, are going to be still pretty good. Because remember, women who are 40, they're not really interested in 25-year-old chads. They've done study. There may be some who, but guess what? First of all, even the 40 and 50-year-old women who are interested in 25-year-old chads, they can still get them. Not for relationships, that's true. But they can still get them for one-night stands if that's just what they want, to just get fucked by Chad. They can do that even at 40, 50, maybe even 60, depending on how well preserved they are. Now, as for relationships, though, women overwhelmingly want men who are about their same age. So, a 40-year-old woman is going to want a guy who's 41 or 42, generally speaking. And guess what? After she hits the wall, she's still going to be able to easily get a relationship with a guy in that age group, okay? Now, she may be post-fertile and not be able to have kids, but she can still get a guy if that's what she wants. Now, it may not be a guy who meets her standards, and maybe hold on one second. Yeah. Sorry about that, guys. This is what I'm talking about, family bullshit around here. I can't wait until this holiday season is over. So anyway, the other thing that they'll talk about, I was just talking about the wall and stuff, which they're obsessed with. Another thing that they'll really talk about a lot is just the debased nature of women, that women are just inherently degenerate, and that historically we haven't seen this because the patriarchy suppressed women's more primitive instincts. This is, this is something that I guess there's something to it, but it's sort of like, I guess that's only because men's primitive instincts haven't been as oppressed. I think that there's a dark side to humanity in general, and there's really a dark side to human sexuality. So, the male dark side, like, often leads to things like really bad things like rape, like as you see especially in prisons, but all over the place, and like just sort of like, just a really there's just a really nasty thing, just kind of like, you see serial killers, they'll be particularly brutal, towards women, but homosexual serial killers will be just as brutal towards men or towards children. And women don't have this women's female sexuality doesn't seem to have this dark trend towards violence. Rather, the dark side of female sexuality is just acting really degenerate and sleeping with the biggest Chad they can find, which is, I mean, it's not ideal, but I think that ours is probably worse. Our sexuality is probably worse. So the then another thing that red pills, I mean, not red pills, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Another thing that MGTOWs are really big into is that women want alphas. They want alphas. The red pillars are saying that women want alphas like we're still in 2012. The women want alpha males. Okay. And y'all going to talk more about this future. But basically, MGTOW is a very red-pilled movement. And this is another, you know, Undead Chronic is probably the best example of this. If you watch some of Undead Chronic's videos, yeah, women want to be on the cock carousel with a bunch of alphas, but then what they want after they're done, after they, you know, they've passed their prime and had their fun, they want commitment with the man because they want to leech off his resources. This is another kind of red pill thing, and this is what women want. So MGTOW is protecting you from these treacherous women who are going to try to just leech off your resources. So that gets into my next criticism of MGTOW, and I would say of all MGTOW's problems, this is the biggest, and that, or I'm sorry, all of MGTOW, most of MGTOW's problems with MGTOW can come from the fact that it is a very red-pilled philosophy. Maybe not, it didn't start out that way because it started out before there was a red pill, but it's a very red-pilled philosophy, and any philosophy that violates the black pill is going to have some problems, and or violates at least some key tenets of the black pill is going to have some problems. But certainly anything with any red pill based philosophy is going to be super problematic. Super problematic, and you're just going to get a ton of bullshit in it. The red pill, like again, I'm going to say it's not 2012 anymore. We're past this red pill bullshit, and this is one reason that I don't expect MGTOW to last or to really grow much of it, because, you know, this is we're like I said, we're about to start 220. There's a new sheriff in town, and it's the black pill. You know, we're in a black pilled world now, and so MGTOW, which is this very red pilled movement, I think you're going to see it like online even, and well, it is all online. Is that it's mostly you know, guys in their 30s and 40s. There are younger MGTOWs, absolutely. Undead Chronic is a younger MGTOW, but for the most part, you know, it's going to appeal to older guys, as the younger generation is much more black-pilled, so that really limits MGTOW's growth opportunity. And in fact, I don't even think it's a coincidence that you're seeing a lot of MGTOWs in places like India or the Middle East, because the red pill hasn't been exposed for the bullshit that it is in those countries yet. You know, as long as the black pill takes over, you know, that's why you're seeing like a lot of the MGTOW growth, at least amongst younger MGTOWs, is in places outside the United States or outside the West, or at least outside the Anglosphere. Okay, now I think every MGTOW, every MGTOW has heard this criticism, and everybody who is either against MGTOW or even a non-MGTOW who's not against it but is familiar with it, there's the same criticism that they're all familiar with. Maybe they've used it themselves. I've used it myself. And it's that, and it's not, you know, but as I no longer, it no longer, you know, I don't use it anymore because I understand it. I understand the male-female dynamic better. But one criticism that is always launched towards MGTOW is, okay, just go your own way already. Stop telling us about it. It's like, you know, like it's like their guys are going up to women and be like, hey, I'm going my own way. Are you mad? I'm going my own way. Just so you know, I'm not going to pursue you anymore. I'm going my own way. So, you know, you've got this online circle jerk of guys just talking about, yeah, we're totally going our own way. And meanwhile, the board is all about, you know, 100% just about women, one way or the other. And this is that's where we get a little philosophical, and why I understand it is also a part of the criticism I have of MGTOW. The reason that they can't, the reason that they're not just, sorry, the reason that they're not just going their own way and not showing up is because they can't. They can't. it's one thing for me to go my own way because I mean I'm pretty fucked up, and the fact, like, it's true that I have no desire to be in a romantic relationship with women, but that's not because I'm above it. That's because I'm like broken. There's part of, like, it's just a part of me that's just missing. Now, one second. Okay, guys. Hey, sorry about that again. This Christmas season is getting old, like I said. So anyway, as I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted, um, the so this goes back to the male drive. Like I said, I don't want it because I don't want a relationship, but that's just me being fucked up. The reason that these guys can't give up, the reason that these guys can't just go their own way and not be bitching about women all the time is because they still in their souls have this drive to cleave to a woman. This is it's like it says in the Bible, in the book of Genesis. um, a man, he grows up, he leaves his father and mother, and he will cleave to his wife. Doesn't say anything about the wife cleaving to her husband. A woman has a desire to cleave to a man as well, but it's not as strong, not nearly as strong. That's why you'll see, in fact, the people with the highest life satisfaction overall are unmarried women, older unmarried women. So this whole thing, like, oh, enjoy your cats, ladies, they will enjoy their cats. They'll be, yeah, sure, there's some who are really depressed about it. And in fact, I'm not saying that women should eschew relationships with men, but for them, it's for them, like, that's why you'll see, like, a lot of women who refuse to compromise on their standards, even though it means them being alone, because if they can't get a man who meets, the minimum of what they want, they would rather be alone, most of them. For men, it's not like that. They will compromise and compromise and compromise because they need to be with somebody. The drive is just so, like I said it before, it's just ingrained in their soul. So MGTOW is this extremely unnatural movement, and because it's unnatural, they can't stop talking about women because they need to convince themselves, like, we're making the right choice, we're not missing out on anything. But it's all just a lie. It's a lie, not to the world, but to themselves. That's why they won't shut up. That's why they won't just go their own way already, because maybe they don't even know it, but they need a woman, and they can't have one. And so so it's like, and that's the worst kind of lie, is the kind of lie you tell to yourself. um now, certainly there's some people who aren't going to be able to find relationships, and maybe a lot of MGTOW guys are like that. And then there's certainly people who maybe they could find relationships, but it's just the rational decision is to eschew relationships, for whatever, maybe the stage of their life, maybe they just can't do it anymore. But the desire is always going to be there. So in a sense, I think MGTOW does have some positives in that, or at least one positive in the fact that there are guys who've made, for them, is probably a rational choice to just get out of the whole relationship race. It's just not worth it to them. So for them, it kind of functions as like a support group, saying like, yeah, like, yes, I part of me wants this relation, like, I have this, deep set desire to have, a relationship with a woman. I'm incomplete without it, but I know up here that it's the wrong thing for me. So I'm in this kind of support group to get through it. Um, so for them it is helping, but also, but what ends up happening is it turns into this kind of just online, like I said, circle jerk hate fest towards women, which is really just counterproductive. And in it, the MGTOWs are really only lying to themselves and hurting themselves. That's all for now, and I'll see you in the next.